I suppose the biggest reason I became an American citizen is so I could vote.
Hi, welcome to the debut episode of Let Me Ask You Something. It is a podcast where I, MD Pittman, talk to everyday people about something extraordinary in their lives. So today you've heard from Ian MacKenzie-Thurley, who is a naturalized American citizen from Australia, as you probably could tell by his accent. We go into his naturalization process, what that entailed, and some of his thoughts on that process. Now, we're not going to get into the politics of this because that's not what this podcast is all about. It's about individual stories and their personal journey. So, I hope you enjoy this debut episode. We have Ian MacKenzie-Thurley. He is an American citizen, I can say now. Well, I could have said it 4 years ago because that is when you became an American citizen. So tell me, Ian, tell me, or I guess I should say, well, let me ask you something, Ian. Why did you want to become an American citizen?
It's a great question. Thanks for having me on, Michael. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the question. I suppose the biggest reason I became an American citizen is so I could vote. It's an important part of who I am and my background. I am, as you may hear from my accent, not originally from these United States. I am an Australian by birth to an Australian mother and a British father. So there was a whole lot going around, and I married an American. So I did a lot of traveling around. I came back and forth to the United States. It's now been over 20 years, but in 2013 landed here in America. And long story short, and we can certainly talk more about it, with my green card, you're afforded all the rights of a citizen. You can be here, you can live here, you can work here, you can pay taxes, you can be a functioning part of society. It's fantastic. You're afforded all the rights afforded under the Constitution, except for the ability to vote. And that's a really big part for me of citizenship and being part of a society. And I see it as an absolute, people see it as a right. I see it as a privilege. And for me, becoming a citizen and being granted citizenship was certainly a privilege, and that right to vote. But that was the big difference for me, and been an exciting journey of that.
So what brought you to the country here? Why did you want to come to America?
That's a great question. I didn't. You
didn't?
Not to live. I never dreamt in a million years that I would live in America, that I would be an American, that I would bring, my family and my whole life would be here. I grew up in Australia. I went to school and college and post-grad in Australia. I worked in the opera and theater field. I still do work in theater, but I was going to go to Europe because that's where you went. Most people my age coming out of college and went to London, and that was the path well trodden, and I was treading that path pretty well. The question I always ask people when they're in interesting places was that, who were they? Which boy, which girl, or which job brought you there? And here I live in Hamilton, Ohio, which is just north of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, great place as it is not the magnet for international travel or tourism. It's not like London. It's not like New York. People come here for reasons. And I met a girl. That's my reason. I met a girl in the Czech Republic nearly 21 years ago. In fact, we're going to be married 20 years this coming week. So
congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I guess the question I need to ask your wife is, what brought her to the Czech Republic?
Well, you know what? I don't know if we're going to get too off the beaten path really quickly, but very, very long story, pretty shortly. We met in an opera house in the Czech Republic. I was working as an assistant director. I was on an Australia Council Fellowship, which is like the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts. Was on a scholarship there to go and travel and work and learn in Europe. She was doing a summer program there. She was meant to go to Italy that year. She had heard about this program that was going on. It's about 4 hours outside of Prague, but it was full, so she was going to Italy. She got a call not long after. They said, look, there's this opportunity, send an audition tape. She did. She got the role. She was singing in a Mozart opera. I was working on a different show in the same opera house. All of that story, we ended up getting married, kept moving back to Australia, and she was doing Christmas caroling, as one would do at Christmas time. But in Australia, it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
It was the first Christmas carol. She was working with the opera company, and she knew some people, and somebody gets a phone number, and this is how gigs work. Anyway, she gets talking to the girl who, put the gig together. She said, oh, well, how did you end up in Australia? She goes, well, I met this guy. I was working with him. Told the whole story. And she goes, that was me. She goes, what was me? She goes, I'm the one who pulled out of that gig in the Czech Republic.
Really?
And opened up. It was that girl. I'm like, yeah. So there's going to be a small world. That's going to be it. So
yeah,
Kelly and I met in the Czech Republic, which I like to call neutral territory. And we met and we traveled Europe. And so I was going to go live in London. I had friends there. I was going there. I was going to spend about a year there, and I was going back to Australia for work. I had some contracts. And instead, I was in Amsterdam, and I was on the phone to this girl that I was hanging out with in Europe. She said, hey, would you like to come to America? I've got friends who work for Delta. I get you this thing called a buddy pass. You can come to America. I'm like, well, why not? So I arrive in England to my friend's place. I get off the plane at Heathrow and come to his place. I said, is there a package for me? He goes, yeah. I said, great. Where's Gatwick? And the next day I hopped on a plane and flew to Cincinnati. That's how I ended up here in the summer of 2000.
Okay. All right.
So accidental. I didn't mean to come to America. I meant to go to Europe. I did well.
Not too bad. 20 years later, you're doing all right. So, so you said you wanted to become a naturalized citizen, American citizen, so you can vote. Talk about the process of getting to that point. So, of becoming, you're an Australian citizen, and what steps did you have to do to become that naturalized citizen?
That's a really good question, and I wish people would ask it more often. We talk a lot about immigration in this country. It's obviously a hot topic, and we don't want to get political. I understand that, but it's something I would suggest people find a little bit more about. Because it's not something that American citizens deal with. We deal with other sides of our democracy, of our legislature, of our processes. And this is one of them, but it's generally not dealt with from American, for your average American citizen, which is understandable. But it's not an easy process. So for me, when we came here in 2013, we were coming for 3 months. In 3 months, just to come and hang out, see the family. I like to say I was the only person on planet Earth that used to vacation in Hamilton, Ohio. Used to check the red schedule, make sure I could get on that, make sure they were in town. Obviously, for 3 months, it was a better thing. I was able to go to, actually, it was my first opening day back in 2013.
That's a holiday down here in Cincinnati.
We ended up playing like 16 or 17 innings, and it was the coldest day of my life. But that's a whole other story. There's been better days at the baseball, but you got to do opening days. So, but my wife is an American. My daughter is an American, both by birth. But for me, we were going to spend some time, and then we were going to get out. And about 6 weeks in, my wife said, "I'd like to stay. I'd like to stay in America." And I'm like, well, that's great. For you both.
Is she from, it's like this area natively?
Oh, yeah. She's a Hamilton girl through and through.
Okay.
So are her parents. And for those who know the area, my mother-in-law went to Talawanda, and my father-in-law went to Ross, and she went to Hamilton High. So
those are all Butler County, Ohio names. So
yeah, she's very loyal. Though she was born on an Air Force base down in Cocoa Beach in Florida.
Okay, down in Florida. Okay.
But they're Ohio natives, and she grew up here. And my little girl will go to the same elementary school that her mother did, and they learned to swim in the same swimming pool. So there's some good history here. So she's from here. So we'd spent some considerable time here over the years. And she was living in Cincinnati when we met, so we were living down in Clifton.
So you said about 6 months later, just to get back on track of the story. Yeah. So 6 months later.
Well, yes, there's 6 weeks, not
Oh,
even
6 weeks. I'm sorry, 6 weeks later.
We're on a 3-month timeline right now. So
Yes, yes.
she's like, I want to stay, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm up for that. I love America. I love being here. We didn't have big plans, but because we didn't have any plans. We'd arrived with suitcases,
Yes.
with summer clothes. So I said, we need to find an attorney. I need to find out what, I know there's going to be processes and processes for this. So I ended up finding a fantastic immigration attorney and saying, do I need to leave the country? Do I need to do this back in England or in Australia and leave my family and come back? These are big conversations, but we were sure that we'd be able to do the process here in America, which we were. And it's extensive. We started the green card process. We'll hear about the green card. Well, they're actually a card and they're actually green.
Yes.
The size of credit card. I know that's evolved over the years, but lots of work. As I recall, about 175 pages of paperwork was submitted.
Wow. And there's a cost to that too.
There are several costs to that. The first, obviously, is your attorney fees, which for anybody listening, pay the money. It's worth every single dime because you get a professional who knows what they're doing, and this is really complex stuff. I mean, really complex. You also pay for the process. So as Americans, we pay taxes, and then we don't pay for services for the government to run because that's what our taxes pay for.
Yeah.
But for immigration, as a foreigner, you have to pay for that. So every time you put a form in, you send a check. Every time you submit something, you pay for the processing of that form.
And I would imagine those fees are different denominations, but overall, how much did you invest to become an American citizen?
I think it was around about $5,000, somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000.
Okay.
It's not, and that included attorney fees and every time you submit a piece of paper, and you have to get background checks and you have to get medical checks. All of this, you're required to pay for, which is fine. But it's not cheap. It's obviously an investment in your life and in your future. But it's not easy. And I obviously speak English. American English is, can be a challenge. I still get that road bump, but I speak English. I have a university education, and I have a strong upper middle class background. I'm able to afford things, and for those who don't have those things, see the challenges, because it was not easy. It was not, it's not insurmountable, but it was a really challenging exercise. For our whole family was involved in this, in writing of affidavits, getting background information, getting checks, making sure we had our full documentation. And this was the history. We'd been married for 13 years and had a child and lived in 2 other countries.
Yeah.
But collating all of that information and filling out forms and making sure they're correct and then having them checked, because it's really, really important, because they don't take it's not just a quick box check. This paperwork was intricate and complex.
Now, obviously, there's pros and cons to every process. And I would imagine obviously the pros outweighed the cons, but what are the negatives in this process besides the insurmountable intricate paperwork?
Oh, to me, there's no negative per se. The rules are the rules. And when my wife and I first got married, I had to go back to Australia. I had contracts to fulfill, so she was moving to a country sight unseen. And I remember, we were newly married. We didn't have a lot of money, and we were just, and I'd just been traveling, so we didn't have this sort of nest egg behind us. There were fees to pay, and she goes, "What do we do?" I'm like, "We pay it. We do it. Whatever they ask for, you have to do it." So, we'd been through these processes before, and understood how they worked, and knew you just had to do the things that you had to do and have be asked, and you have to be patient about it. And that's one of the big challenges. You just have to be patient, because you never quite know what the timeline is. Though, again, I had an experienced attorney who could say, this is going to take 2 weeks and then you should get this. This is going to take 6 weeks and you should get this, because he knew what he was doing. He was experienced in that. And that really helped. It's like anything when you're waiting. You don't mind waiting 2 weeks if you know it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You mind waiting 2 weeks if it's supposed to be 2 days. So knowing the sort of the timeline really assisted us. But you just have to be patient, because you're on government time. And again, all of this is a privilege. This is not granted to you, it's given to you. You've got to earn it. You've got to work for it. And you're granted this privilege, and it takes a long time to process.
Now, one thing I was looking up here for a little, somebody might have noticed some of the reflections on my screen here was changing. I wanted to ask you this: how difficult was the naturalization test, the actual civics test that you had to do?
To me, it wasn't difficult because I got to tell you, I studied my butt off. I really did. There was no way I was not going in there and acing every part of that test. It just wasn't going to happen. I really worked hard. They give you 100 questions, and they give you the questions and they give you the answers, and you go to work. But I had an app on my phone. I had flashcards. It was breakfast and civics in our house. The problem is for my family is I absolutely love it. I think physics. I think civics is just awesome. I love it. I find it incredibly interesting. American history and American political history and constitutional history, I find fascinating.
Yeah.
So
what was your score? What did you score?
Well, I scored 100%.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. But they, once you get to a passing grade, they stop, and I'm like, keep coming.
Yeah.
They did the fun part about it is they make you have to do a writing test and you have to do an English test. Obviously, the test is also in English.
Yeah.
The fact that you grew up in English speaking country doesn't count. Obviously, it helps.
Yeah.
Because I would hate to be trying to do this test in Japanese or in Spanish for me, or it would be incredibly challenging. To do something in another language. They give you a phrase that you have to write, and they gave me the phrase "we pay taxes," and I wrote "yes, we do." But you have to have a strong working knowledge of the English language to be able to pass this test. But I have to say, I had the woman who did my test for my immigration, for my citizenship, was the same person who did my interview for my green card.
Okay.
If you remember me, she's like, "Oh, you've got the opera singer husband, you got the opera singer wife," and I'm like, "Oh."
I thought you were going to say it was the person who pulled out of the gig for your wife.
Well, 3 years later, she remembered me. I wasn't sure if it was just the file, but she knew exactly who I was and remembered that our conversations and everything. So
yeah.
And
I found a test that I think it was, I don't know if it's a sample test or not. It had 100 questions on it. I'm going to put that in the show notes. I've always wanted to say that. Put it in the show notes.
It's an interesting way to get around your American history. That and watch Hamilton. Hamilton, best civics lesson you'll ever get is watching the musical Hamilton.
Yeah,
full of dates and times and places. I was like, oh, right, this makes sense now. This is fantastic. It was a great civics lesson for me. But so they were very friendly. It's not a grilling. I found that whole process to be incredibly respectful, polite, engaging, helpful. From when you get welcomed in at the desk to people, and I saw the staff interacting with people from all over the world, and again using language, using respectful introductions, trying to find a middle ground there. It's not like, well, you're going to be an American now, we're going to do this the American way, but finding a cultural respect and sensitivity. I was really impressed by the whole process, not just for me, but what I witnessed down there. It used to be the and Naturalization and Immigration Services, now obviously changed with Department.
Yeah. Great. So they say it's a broken system. How do you fix it?
That's a huge question, and I know that's in front of Congress and our president right now. It becomes about a philosophical thing. The great majority of Americans are immigrants or related to them. We obviously have Native American tribes here who were here, and they're here. This is their land. They were here first. Have this very similar thing in Australia. It's been interesting to see what people recognize as their America. We just had St. Patrick's Day. where we celebrate being Irish, and we're all wearing green, and we're all having green beer, and
I'm still celebrating it.
There you go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your last name is. You're Irish for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are. Shall I show you the sign that say "No Irish Allowed"?
Yeah.
No jobs for the Irish. There was a time where the Irish were not welcome here as immigrants, and that cycled through. And we go off on a huge tangent of American political and social history and civil rights that obviously needs a conversation. That's not this conversation, but grant that conversation should be had. But it's evolved, and as you see immigration go through, and I used to live in London's East End, and you've seen an evolution there of there is a building there that was a church, then it was a Jewish temple, and then it was a mosque. It's the same building. So there's an evolution of the people and the community comes through. So as we look at America and what has built America, it's been built on the back of immigration. And we should be proud of that. And we've got to acknowledge that. And if we want to go forward, which is the only way we can go, I mean, it's got incredible history to this country. There's incredible history to lots of countries, but incredible history of this country and what brought it together. Well, who made that? Who created that? The biggest part of what we see as modern America, and please not to take anything away from the Native Americans, that immigration put that together, and building upon and building upon and building upon. And I'm proud of that history. There's a great line in Hamilton, an immigrant himself.
Yeah.
Immigrants, we get the job done. Which obviously, we can do, but that's all of it. That's not to say anybody who's first or second generation, 10th generation. The great majority of Americans are descended from immigrants, and there's a reason for that. So as we go forward, then, where do we want to be? How do we service this country and its needs? There's a reason people want to come here. There's a reason that the green card is one of the most prized things on the planet. That's to be celebrated. That says a lot about this country and this culture and what people see or perceive it to be, and the opportunities that are afforded in this country. And I'm not talking about, we're talking about there's a welfare state, you get given all this stuff. As an immigrant, there's not a lot you get given.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but you get given an opportunity. And I like to say that when you talk about everything in America's done, America put a man on the moon. That's not insignificant.
No.
That's the kind of, but it speaks volumes to what you can do in this country or out of this world. And that there's an opportunity for that. And let's talk a little bit about Ohio and the opportunity to go to the moon. But that is throughout the planet. People from all over the world want to be here. And I can see why. This is the country that gets things done.
Well, I want to ask you two specific things. One, I'll ask now, and then the other was about some of the naturalization ceremonies that we've seen in Hamilton. But first, what was America? What were your thoughts on America growing up? I mean, how did you picture it?
So this is that's a really interesting question, and it comes with a sort of a two-part answer. But we were told that we were very Americanized in Australia because we had lots of American TV shows. So I had Bewitched and Mr. Ed and Beverly Hills 90210, which will date my childhood. I knew what a Mustang was. I knew what a Budweiser beer was. We had McDonald's. We had Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I knew what America was. I'd grown up, watched the Godfather movies, watched Top Gun. So I had what I thought was a very good understanding of America and American culture. When I went to Europe for the first time, I did a lot of study. I studied languages, I studied history, because I didn't really know what I was going on when I was going to the Czech Republic and to Poland and to Germany. So I really needed to know what's going on and know which way's up. And I went to these countries, and though I was fish out of water, and I knew I was in a very foreign place, and going to places like Tokyo and stuff, I'd been really put in the work because I really didn't know these places, and I wanted to get my head around it. I was comfortably uncomfortable, which is the way you should be when you travel. You should be aware, but there's a reason you go there and try the new food and the new things. Yeah. So that was great. When I came to America, So they said, I got a quick invitation. Here I come, and I'm going to come to. Well, I'm going to be fine because I've watched the TV shows and I've drunk a Coca-Cola and I've eaten a burger and I know what a greenback is. Yeah, send me on. Pop me on the plane. So I get on the plane. I end up here in Cincinnati and completely arrogant and ignorant. I've never had culture shock, not in Berlin and not in Tokyo, until I got to Cincinnati, Ohio. I had the bed covers pulled up over my eyes for a week. I didn't know what end was up. It was like I'd landed on another planet. I went from knowing, oh, well, I know all about America, to not having a freaking clue what I was doing. It really was. And it's all on me because I didn't do the work. And I did all this presumption of what I thought America was. Yeah. And it wasn't. I mean,
I got a presumptive question. It's actually my stupid question of the day. Is Foster's Australian for beer?
It really isn't.
Is that just an Americanized version of beer?
Well, it is an Australian beer, and it does and has existed in Australia. But we get that again. That's a whole other podcast about beer drinking in Australia. But it's an American ad. We also don't have shrimp on the barbie. We have prawns on the barbie. It's the littlest things. I remember being in a Bob Evans or something, and I'd been here like a couple of weeks and having breakfast. And I said to the lady server, I said, "May I have a serviette, please?" She goes, "I don't know what that is." And I said, "Oh,
I don't know what that is either.
I don't know what to ask that it isn't." What? And I'm like, I'm here having a conversation in English, and now I'm illiterate. So,
what were you asking for?
A napkin. I wanted to wipe my face. So is a napkin. It's that freaking simple. But now I'm here. I'm using my sleeve because I can't speak English. So it's the littlest of things. And I say this all the time. And my mother recently emigrated here. My 80-year-old mother moved here to Hamilton. And she's lived all around the world. It's great to have because that's my only family of my side of the family. Yeah. And to be here and to be able to look after my mother, she lives close to us, which is fantastic. But I said to her, be careful. The thing with America is it's so like, Britain or Australia. We all speak English or variants thereof. Obviously, we drive on different side of the road, but you can live and exist in these places. Again, it's not like going to Prague. It's not like going to Tokyo. You can get around. But everything's just a little off. And when you go through a door and you bang a door and you catch your arm, how did that move? Yeah. It's like that. So you're walking down and you're so sure
you're on the straight and narrow, but
bam, you clip your arm because it's not, because if the door was over there, you'd be fine, you'd move. But it's just it's those little things that really catch you up. Because this is a different country, this is a different culture. In Britain and in Europe, America is sometimes derided for its lack of culture and its lack of nuance, which I completely disagree with, and I've disagreed with for 20 years. I think the depth and the nuance of the culture in America is extraordinary and comparable to anywhere in the world, and particularly Europe. We have this, to eat food in New Orleans is not the same as eating food in New York, and it's not the same as eating in Texas as you would be up in Spokane. Or ordering a beer or having a conversation. We have different language, we have different food, we have different music, but we have one currency.
And it's even from state to state. I mean, Ohio and Kentucky or Indiana right next to each other, and you got three completely different cultures.
And that's to be celebrated. But again, Americans are this. America is this, and America isn't. America is so completely and vastly different, not just geographically, but socially, culturally, which makes it exciting. Yeah. I have only been to, I think now, 28 states, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. And by going to a state means you don't get to pass through airports. That doesn't count. You got to be there and eat a meal.
It's not crossing the border.
Yeah.
So in Hamilton, Ohio, at the Miami University Hamilton campus, They have, and they didn't have it last year because of COVID, but for 5 years running, they had a naturalization ceremony. I've covered that. I'll link my stories into the show notes. I get to say that again. But it's a pretty cool process. They had, I think they've 400, 500 people over those 4 or 5 years. What one have you, I don't know if I saw you at those, but can you tell me a little bit about your experience for the naturalization process? You went to the courthouse, right?
I did, down in Cincinnati. So mine was all done in Cincinnati in January, so in the depths of winter. And in fact, my America Day, as I like to call it, is the 27th of January. Australia Day, like Independence Day, 4th of July, is the 26th of January. So I was sort of glad about that. I don't know if I'd have had some conflict if I had them both on the same day. But we're invited to the courthouse. There was about 70 or 80 of us. Okay. You want to see 70 or 80 nervous people? You have to hand over your green card before you do the ceremony. Yeah. And this is something you have glued to you for years. You have to go everywhere with your green card. It's an important part of your life to hand that over. And then so you sort of you spend an hour in limbo between handing over your green card. And
like you're getting catfished or something.
Yeah, you're like, get one of these, aren't I? Great thing is they give you all the documentation for your voter registration, but you may not sign it. You can fill it in, but you may not sign it until after you finish the ceremony. They're very clear about that. You can fill it in, you may not sign it. And the lady judge we had there, it was phenomenal. Talk about immigration. She introduced herself, but she talked about her family coming to Ellis Island. She goes, and here are the papers from Ellis Island. This is my lineage. I'm an American, she's a federal judge. Yeah. But these are her descendants. This is how they arrived and came from Italy and all that. And she was incredibly proud of that and proud of that history. And as they would have been proud of these immigrants coming to Ellis Island, and a federal court judge, it was pretty moving, but she understood it. It wasn't just, I've got to do this thing, put up your right hand and we'll get out of here before lunchtime. She had a strong and visceral connection to what we were doing. So that was pretty amazing. And we were sat there, we looked like the United Nations. There was people from all over the world. Oh, yeah. Which, was fantastic. See all different, colors and cultures and backgrounds and accents,
and even the dress, so the garb that they wear, they're native to their country. I know a lot of people from Burma come over to become naturalized citizens. There's a lot of Burmese. I don't know how Burmese that were at these naturalization ceremonies in Hamilton. It's just. And they have their native colors and country or garb of their country,
and you don't want to leave that behind. And that was made very clear to me too. That you obviously become Americans, and we're proud of that, and we choose to do that. This is all of our own volition. And you want assimilation. I like being American. I like being in America. I like the way we do things here. Otherwise, I would be somewhere else. But you bring some of your old, the old country with you. Which is important. It's important to me, obviously.
How often do you go back?
I have not been back in 10 years.
Really?
It's my whole family is here and pretty much now in Hamilton. Doesn't mean I want to go other places. And well, we all haven't been other places for a while. Yeah. But I've never been to Brazil. I've never been to Argentina. There's plenty of places. I've never been to Russia. There's plenty of other places I'd like to go as well. And we've been fortunate enough. We have lots of friends who come to visit. Here in Hamilton, we try to make sure you was like go to LA and then go to Chicago and then pop down to Cincinnati and we'll come and get you from the airport. Picked up one of my best friends in another best friend of mine's 1979 Lincoln Continental at Christmas time last year. It was the greatest experience ever, rolling up in a 19-foot Lincoln. Boat. Whoa, get into this. Doesn't get more American than that. But the ceremony was fantastic. Yeah. And it's moving. It's important. And you get up and you take the oath. And it's been interesting. I've referenced that a lot, particularly this last year. We've been asked to do some things as a society. during the pandemic, which is, some of it's been as easy as just stay at home.
Yeah.
Wear a mask. Keep 6 foot away from people. Now, that's what we've been asked to do by people I would think that are smarter than me. You know, I'm not an expert in infectious diseases. I'm an expert, I would feel, in other things. Public health isn't one of them.
Yeah.
That's what I've been asked to do. And I look back at my citizenship oath, and this would be something to put in your show notes, is the oath. And it talks about doing work of national importance when asked to by civil and military authorities. Basically, at the end of the day, it says when things go down, you're an American. You're going to stand up and fight for America. You can be that in a military way or in a civilian way, but we're going to ask you to do some things, and you're going to need to do it, please. And I took that very, very seriously. Again, I took this oath by my own request and my own volition. And so when we're asked to do those things, I saw that as a very serious thing as an American. That's citizenship. That's being a citizen. When I was asked to stay at home, when I was asked to stay 6 feet, when I was asked to wear a mask, my answer is yes. And if things got serious and you have to take up arms in defense of your country, well, you do that too. But that was in defense of our country. The 6 feet, the mask, the space, that was in defense of my neighbor and our friends. And that's really, really important to me. So again, it's not just about taking an oath and putting up your hand. It's about engaging in your community. I will say this. We've had a lot of conversation about the national anthem in this country. I love the national anthem in this country. It's really hard to sing. My naturalization.
I'm sorry,
naturalization
you froze up on me a little, Ian. You said you love to sing it, and then you froze.
I'm sorry. I love the national anthem. I'm very proud to stand for the national anthem, and that is my right and my choice and my privilege as an American citizen to do, and I'm very happy to do that. But at my naturalization ceremony, there was no national anthem. We did the naturalization oath. We did the Pledge of Allegiance, and for me, and producer me is like, and now we bring out the band, or here's the singer. It seemed like a very appropriate moment to have the national anthem.
Yeah.
And it never happened. There was no national anthem at my naturalization ceremony. I was a little disappointed. Producer and me was disappointed, but I thought this was a really great time for us to get. And I had 2 opera singers with me and a guitar player. I mean, we could have got this. We needed something to rustle up something the last minute. We were there.
Oh, you didn't close the show there. You didn't close the show.
But it's interesting. So but on the funnier side of that, I was waiting for my first national anthem because first national anthem as an American. This is exciting. Looking around for opportunities to be at something. So there's an anthem play. This goes on for weeks and weeks and months and months. Finally, get a call from the Reds. Hey, you want tickets to opening day? I'm like, yes. It does. This is the most American. I mean, naturalization ceremony, yes, but opening day of a baseball game.
America's pastime.
This is it. This is the anthem. My first anthem will be at opening day
of the Cincinnati Reds.
This is it. This was meant to be. So excited. Waiting for April for opening day. In late March, I booked tickets to go to see the circus, the Barnum and Bailey. They were doing a last tour. Take my little girl, and everything's great. We go to do the thing, and the circus and the clowns and the stuff, and we're there, and we're waiting for the show to start, and it's all excited. And it's, ladies and gentlemen, would you please be upstanding for the national anthem of the United States?
The circus ruined your first time experience.
Oh, it ruined it. I just got, you know what? You got to take it where it comes. So I stayed hand on heart, and I got my first national anthem at the circus. So,
all right.
But that's a big part of it for me. That's, again, that takes us off to a whole other conversations. But I like to stand and sing the national anthem. But again, I know what my rights and my choices are. I respect other people's rights and choices as well.
All right. Well, I think we've been going pretty long here, longer than I thought we would. But any closing thoughts or parting comments you'd like to say about your whole naturalization, American citizenship process? I'm
incredibly proud of it, and I'm incredibly privileged. I've been afforded something that many other people haven't and have wanted to do. I know my family is here and all of that, and that becomes an intricate part of it. But I think this is an incredible nation. I know we have challenges, but this nation has had plenty of challenges. And we talk about 2021 being a turbulent time, but again, crack the history books and you'll find plenty of turbulent times. But this country finds a way forward, and I'm proud to be a small part of it. I'm one of 320 million people. Citizenship for me is not just about being an American. It's about being a Hamiltonian. It's what I do in my street. It's what I do in my I live in German village. What I do in my village and what I do in my community, that's citizenship. More than any waving of a flag or standing for an anthem, these are great things to do, but what are you doing to help your fellow citizens? What are you doing? The best work I've been able to do in the last year is I volunteer as part of the vaccination team, filling out vaccination forms. I feel like I'm contributing just one little thing to get us forward, to get us to the other side of a pandemic, that I've contributed. It's just something small. That for me is citizenship with an underline under it. No amount of flag waving or oath taking makes up for anything else. You've got to contribute. And I say to all my fellow Americans, and I say to anybody who complains, where do you volunteer? Where do you help out? Don't complain about the government. Don't complain about what's going on if you're not contributing in some way as well. And I think in America, if you do that, there will always be somebody else to help. Oh, you're doing that? I'll help you. I'll help you carry it. I'll help you take it forward. And that's one of the things that makes this country amazing, is that people just come behind and support. Somebody's doing good things, wait 2 minutes because there'll be somebody else behind you and behind them. And I'm proud of being a small part of that. And that for me is at the core of the citizenship and core of my inspiration for living here and continuing to want to live here. Despite any challenges that might come through, I feel I'm surrounded by 320 million amazing people, and we can achieve anything. Go back to the moon, go to Mars, or make sure our neighbors are taken care of across the street.
So to sum that up, citizenship starts at home.
Absolutely. It has to. That is we talk about being a good citizen. Mm-hmm. It's not just about being good, but being involved. And I'm very fortunate, as you know, the city that I live in, Hamilton, is full to the brim of good citizens, of people who don't talk about citizenship, who live citizenship through their example, through their help. And most of them you'll never hear of, and they won't be written about, and there won't be an article in the paper, and they won't care because they're just doing it because that's who they are.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring. And I could give you a litany of people, an example of names of people who inspire me that should be, carved into stone, that should be on the front of textbooks, just for the things they do to make their city, their street, their neighborhood a wonderful place to be and grow up in and live in. And that's at the soul of this American community.
Great. With that, I will leave it for a conversation here. So I appreciate it. Ian MacKenzie-Thurley, American citizen.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time.